Joining us on segment number 35 of the Instant Preview and Reaction Series, he covers the Texas Rangers at rangerstoday.com, Jeff Wilson. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. How are things in the Lone Star State?
They're good. We just had a big rainstorm blow through tonight, and it canceled. Just the forecast alone canceled my daughter's musical, which second grade musical is called Bugs. She's really fired up, but for some reason they just canceled all these events. And it turns out, it came through and it rained like hell and the wind was really strong. But kids these days aren't very tough. We should have done it.
I was gonna say you could talk to that guy over there. He's got a couple of his own. Me and the baby in the corner down that way. We still have a few more years to go. But thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
Here, Jeff. And a lot of fun talking about the Texas Rangers because the last few years really it's been blah with them. But now there's a lot of good storylines, and I think we got to start off, of course, since we are from New York and he is a Mets fan. We always got to talk about Jacob deGrom, and he's now down in Texas. So he did have some discomfort in the beginning too, where stiffness was what was the official word there, and how's he doing in the first few days of spring training?
Yeah, I think they called it tightness, left side tightness, and he said that it wasn't even an issue. He was planning to throw through it. I guess they asked him how he felt. He goes, I got this little thing. And they know the injury history and they know the contract, so I think they shut it down. It makes sense. It was the first day of spring training. Before I was in Arizona, before I came back here, I saw him throw his first bullpen. It was light. It was Mike Maddox called it mound catch. So it wasn't a real serious session, but I guess he dialed it up his last one a few days ago. And reports are good. He should be getting in a game here, I would think, reasonably soon. Hopefully when I'm there, I'm going back next week. So hopefully I'll get to see that. But he's been a real pleasant guy. He's been approachable in the clubhouse. So I think maybe, he acknowledged that our first interview with him, there were 4 reporters and 1 TV camera. So a little change of scenery from New York and what he would be getting in Port St. Lucie. But he seems relaxed, seems happy, and doesn't seem concerned at all about this tightness.
Yeah, I was going to say 4 reporters, one TV camera. You might want to add a 0 to both of those.
Right, exactly.
That's for sure. Ian, I'm going to throw this one to you because I'm sure you have a couple of other follow-ups there.
Look, it was sad to see as a Met fan deGrom go, but happy he landed somewhere. We knew he was going to land somewhere, and wish him nothing but the best now in Arlington with the Rangers. Jeff, thank you for taking some time. Joey kind of alluded to, we're waiting kind of the results to come for the Texas Rangers these last few years. 2 off seasons ago, they go out, they sign Corey Seager, and they go out and get Marcus Semien. We know they obviously did the big contract that they doled out this offseason for Jacob deGrom. I don't want to sit here and say let's just kind of preview the season as a whole and kind of look forward to where the Rangers will be after game 162 right now in March. But from where they're at and what they've gone out to acquire this season, it seems like they're really at a level where they're ready to compete now in 2023.
Yeah, it's a different vibe than it has been for sure in spring training. Last year, like you said, they signed the guys, Seager and Semien, $500 million, throw in John Gray for another, 54, I think, or 56. Spent some money, and then obviously not only did they sign deGrom this offseason, but they signed Eovaldi for a pretty good contract, and Andrew Heaney for a 1-year deal, re-signed Martin Perez. So they've got a really good rotation in place on paper. But it's just different. They expect to win now. I think last year it was like, if X, Y, and Z happens, we've got a chance. And X, Y, and Z never happened. But this year, X, Y, and Z are in place. It's just a matter of getting to the starting line and getting to the finish line. But I think that, it's kind of unusual for the Rangers to be talked about as a pitching first team. This is a franchise that's just, mashed and mashed and mashed throughout its existence. With you can go back to the '90s teams with Ivan Rodriguez and Juan Gonzalez and Rafael Palmeiro, and then really the two World Series teams with Adrian Beltre, Josh Hamilton, Michael Young. This team has outscored its opponents. That's how they've traditionally won. But now they expect to do it with pitching, and have Bruce Bochy as manager, and talk about all the money they spent. Bruce Bochy and Mike Maddox might be two of the, behind DeGrom might be the two biggest pickups on this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see. Bruce seems pretty energetic and ready to go for a guy who's approaching 68 and has had his knee replaced. He walks like he's 90, but he sure does. He still talks the game. He's pretty excited. And Mike Maddox had his brother in camp, still there for a few more days. So that's been players, and the young players have been eating that up. And it just seems like there's a much more positive vibe. Of course, it's a tough division with the Astros and the Mariners. The Angels got better. So we'll see what happens. But I'm expecting more than 68 wins, for crying out loud.
Mike Szabo, you have any idea who Mike Maddox's brother is? He's totally that'll be discussed off air, Jeff. It's a little inside joke here on the podcast as to how young the man sitting to your right is, because I grew up in the '90s, so I very well know who his brother is. But it's so interesting how you brought up the factor of the Rangers being a team that just historically has mashed the ball. And like I said, growing up in the '90s, I remember the Juan Gunn and Pudge days. And then even if you fast forward to the two World Series against the Cardinals and those teams with Josh Hamilton and it always seemed like even in their heyday, if you to pay a history lesson back to the '90s, the one piece they were always missing was starting pitching. And now you have this plethora of starting pitching, what you had alluded to, in addition, because last year it was Martin Perez, Dane Dunning, John Gray, certainly for the contract he was getting, underwhelming. But now you're adding DeGrom, Evaldi, Heaney, Odorizzi. So there's certainly more than their fair share of starters at kind of more than a wealth of starters available to them. But I wanted to go back to what you had said about Bruce Bochy, because I thought you brought up an excellent point. I think that kind of factors into I go back to last year and I think of everything that occurred with the White Sox with Tony La Russa, and now you're bringing in, even though Bruce Bochy, now granted, Bruce Bochy had won 3 World Series in 5 years with the San Francisco Giants. Are you a little worried, at least a little bit, even though he seems energetic, are you a little worried about the time off for him a bit and the age?
He still had an advisory role with the Giants, so he didn't just hang it up and go to Antarctica or something. I mean, he's been around the game, and I think that he really missed it. I don't know that I got that sense from La Russa. I mean, La Russa had already been inducted to the Hall of Fame. What was he, 76, 75, something like that? I don't know that the game had passed him by, but something changed. Maybe whether it's players changing or whatever, he couldn't. You never got a sense that there was that dynamic that you need, the winning chemistry. And from we weren't in the pre-camp meeting, players meeting, obviously, but the people I talked to about it said that he just galvanized the group right away. And maybe some of it was his energy. He's got a ton of credibility, obviously, for the 3 World Series, the first of which was against the Rangers in 2010. And we've asked him, he manipulated the bullpen so well during the postseason those years. Well, he can't really do that anymore because he's got the 3-batter minimum. And there is more data and stuff like that. But all these guys who have success adapt, and Mike Maddox adapted. I mean, they want their starters to go as deep as possible in the games. There's no doubt about that. But they've adapted. They know how to use the analytics and things like that. But I think, with Chris Woodward, the last few seasons, it was so heavy on analytics. The Rangers have made such an investment into that stuff, and I don't know that it's paid off. And I think you need a little combination of both. You need just the baseball acumen, the eye test, and you can use the data to help individual hitters. But I think Bochy's going to be I don't think it's going to be Tony La Russa 2.0. I think he's still sharp, and I don't think the game's passed him by.
And I don't disagree with you at all, Jeff. I was just curious to get your take there.
Yeah.
Just one more question for you before I pass it on to Mike. You had spoken a little bit about how the Texas Rangers have just historically been a mashing team, and we spoke about Seager and Semien a little bit. I want to kind of ask how they've been looking this spring, but most importantly, really who is going to be that next guy after those two to really step up and make it a little bit more formidable of a lineup? Is it going to be Josh Young, their touted number one prospect from a few years ago? Like, what are you seeing this spring to see who's going to complement those two studs in the middle of the lineup?
Yeah, well, they had 4 guys who hit more than 25 home runs last season. Seager had 33. Semien, Nate Lowe, and Adolis Garcia were in there. Lowe was the American League Silver Slugger winner at first base. Maybe it was a down year for the rest of the fields, but he had a really good season. He hit 300, hit 27 home runs, I think. Really good against left-handed pitching, which is interesting for a left-handed hitter. Much better, actually, than he is against right-handers. So I think that's a guy who's, he can take another step. He's got unbelievable raw power. His BPs are really impressive. He's hit some of the longest home runs at Globe Life Field. I know it's only a few years old, but so I think he's going to be good. But you're right about Josh Young, and another name I'll throw out there is Mitch Garver. Garver was hurt last year, had the surgery for the flexor tendon. Josh Young, he's, everybody's expected the last 2 years that he'd make his major league debut, which he finally did last year. But, he's had injuries. He's just, he's a big guy. I mean, he's not listed that big, but you see him and it's pretty impressive. And there's going to be bumps, I think, with him. You kind of saw last year, he was chasing a lot when he came up, and I think he was pressing, but the third base should be upgraded just by him. A catcher with Jonah Heim and Garver. Garver's going to DH some. If they're healthy, that's some pretty good production right there. That'll help stretch that lineup out and make it harder on opposing teams.
Mike Szabo, take it over.
Yeah, hey Jeff, thanks once again for taking some time out with us. You transitioned right into my question about the catcher position there. Garver being hurt last year, but he comes over. An interesting platoon that they have there. Heim, certainly you're looking for some more offense from him there. Garver's typically been a bit streaky in his time with Minnesota. Yeah. There's some potential there. So an interesting plethora, as you mentioned, trying to look for more offense at the bottom of the order. What's it been like in the first couple of days with them? How have they looked?
Well, they've both homered early on, in the first week, and so is Sam Huff, who's he's not a prospect anymore. I mean, he made his major league debut in 2020, but he barely has given up his rookie status. These guys have the potential. I mean, Garver's had a 31 home run season. Heim is a switch hitting 6'4" catcher with power, and his numbers weren't terrific last year. He really faded in the second half with Garver hurt. They were leaning on him a lot. He was catching a lot of games every week, and he wore down physically. So I think that was something that was new to him. I mean, that was his second full season in the majors, his first as the full-time catcher, because he was splitting time with Jose Trevino in 2021. So I think Heim has a chance to be a pretty good offensive player because Garver's back, and he'll probably catch more games than Garver. He's a better defensive catcher than Garver. I think he was second to Trevino last year in pitch framing, which the Rangers have been really good at and really focused on. So I think because of that, he catches more. Not that Garver's a bum behind the plate, but he's never been thought of as any Gold Glove candidate. So I think just the balance, if they're both able to stay healthy and keep each other fresh, then they've got a chance to have an advantage. Because you look at catcher across all of baseball, Toronto has good catching good hitting catchers. Atlanta does. There's probably a couple others in there, but the Rangers should be at the top if these two stay healthy.
Yeah, you mentioned the word healthy. It feels like that's always going to be a key this year with Texas, especially in that rotation. I know I saw Fangraphs is predicting 83 wins. I think health probably goes a long way with that. Would you think that's a fair assessment of where you'd hope Texas lines up, or is it going to be under or slightly over?
Well, I mean, 15 wins is a huge jump. I mean, it really is from one year to the next. I mean, it's been done before, obviously. Back in the 90s, the Twins and the Braves did it in the same year and went to the World Series, and last to first. And it's not impossible. And I think there's a stat that the last however many years, a team that had a losing record the previous season ended up reaching the postseason. So the Rangers have a chance. I mean, they have so much talent. With everybody, you got to stay healthy. But when you look at the rotation, DeGrom, Evaldi, Perez, Gray, Heaney, 4 of those 5 missed time last year. 4 of those 5 missed time the previous year. The only one who's been healthy for a while is Martin Perez. And then, is he going to have that kind of year that he had last year? 287 ERA or 289 all-star appearance. But even if he regresses by a half a run or regresses to 3.5, that's still a pretty good starter. But yeah, so health is the central thing here. The Rangers had a good lineup last year. They really did. I think they scored the 5th most runs in the American League. So they have a good lineup, but they really are leaning on the pitchers. And if they can stay healthy, if they get 20 to 25 starts from DeGrom, I think they have a really good chance at that number 83 or even a little bit better. But what does DeGrom have the last 3 seasons? Is he even 30?
Maybe it's got to be somewhere around there. Yeah,
24, maybe the last 2. I mean, it's 26 the last 2. That's what it is. It's such a small number. Can he do that in 1 year?
You're just really holding your breath with respect to Jake. You're really holding your breath with regards to his health, and just with the amount of money you're paying him. You want him to stay healthy. You know what he can do when he stays healthy, but at the same time, the risk that you're taking with him as well.
Sure, and you got to, to get the player, you got to spend the money. I know some people have been like shocked at the deal he got, and honestly, I was surprised the Rangers did it. But Chris Young is the general manager now. He's the former big league pitcher. He understands it. I think a lot of guys like that the general manager played and has been in their shoes and understands that. But they went for it. And the owner, his name's Ray Davis. He's 80 to 82. We can't nail down his age for some reason. It's top secret. But I'm telling you, I think he's tired of losing. And I don't want to say he's got 1 foot in the grave, but he doesn't have a lot of years left to have a World Series. And I think he committed the money, and it's time to go.
Mike, go on, man. We got to hear some more.
Joey, take it away.
All right. Never mind. So, Jeff, I got to ask you this. Obviously one of the biggest off-season acquisitions being Jake DeGrom and pretty much the rotation. But one area that was really not, there was not a lot of money put in towards was the bullpen.
Yeah.
I look at that and I say to myself, that's a glaring need. And I don't know if, the guys like, former Yankees legend Ian Kennedy could get it done. Can he get it done? Or is there someone that, is pinpointed, on the bullpen that has shined in the early going?
It's probably too early to tell. Jose Leclerc probably is the leading candidate to be the closer. He's got a neck deal, and it was announced today that he's not going to be in the WBC with the Dominican Republic. But I'm sure the Rangers are thrilled with that. Actually, it seems like baseball wide, they're just coming up with excuses to keep these guys out of the WBC. Whether it's insurance on contracts or the Edwin Diaz deal with the Mets pitching back to back. I mean, did that just come to light today? I mean, it's 9 days before the WBC. I mean, was that not a possibility in January? Could you have not addressed it 3 months ago? I just don't. It just seems like a lot of guys, and then you put a lot of money into a closer record deal. I get it, but I don't know. It just seems like teams aren't wanting their guys to go. But I would say Leclerc is the closer. Jonathan Hernandez, another guy who throws really hard. They both had Tommy John surgery at the same time in 2021 and came back last year. So they should have all the Tommy John command and issues that affect those guys behind them. Ian Kennedy, I don't know, he's 38 or 39. His velocity really dipped in the second half last year. It's a non-roster deal, so he's got to work to make the team. And another guy is Brock Burke, who is from the great state of Colorado, like myself, but he had a phenomenal year out of nowhere last year. He was a starter. The stuff plays up in shorter stints, but he was a 2-inning guy. But now they're kind of looking at him as a potential closer candidate. So that's an interesting name to watch. I wouldn't be surprised if he got some save chances. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there's no Edwin Diaz. There's no. They had an opportunity to re-sign Matt Moore. Didn't take it. But they like the arms, and I think there was another Fangraphs deal that I'd seen that the Rangers have 16 guys who would be above WAR, above replacement players. They would have a positive WAR. A lot of those guys are on option, so they can move up and down if something happens. The Rangers did not trade any of their prospects this offseason, so they have a chance to upgrade at the deadline if needed. But it is interesting that they didn't address it. I agree with you on that 100%.
Absolutely. And my last question for you for this evening is obviously Luis Garcia. And last year he looked fantastic. And, do we expect him to take yet another leap potentially and I can't believe I'm putting his name in the same sentence, but, like a Julio Rodriguez type leap, maybe, especially with some guys around him now. And he does have some, solid batters around him. And it's not only him.
Yeah. He was more selective last year, and if you look at the numbers, it's very marginal, the differences between 2021 and 2022 in terms of things that would make you think he was more selective.
Yeah.
But he was, and he talked about that first day in camp, how that was something he focused on his approach. You don't want your cleanup hitter to necessarily be a guy who's passive, but there's got to be a fine line between the aggression and knowing when to take a pitch and stay within yourself. And that's something he's working on. I mean, he's 30 or 31 years old. It's not like he's a whippersnapper, but he defected from Cuba, played a few years in the minors in the Cardinals system, was a waiver claim. The Rangers DFA'd him before the 2021 season. Nobody claimed him. And then he was a contender for Rookie of the Year. Great story. The guy could be a bodybuilder. He's just ripped and strong and plays with a ton of energy. I think that's what they like about him. He makes great plays. He's a really good all-around player. He was a 25-25 guy last year. So he does have another level though. But it's him being able to differentiate when to be aggressive and when he needs to step back off the throttle a little bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, covering the Texas Rangers for RangersToday.com, Jeff Wilson. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us here on our AL West preview segment, and we hope to see you back here soon with us to talk some positive Rangers talk later on in the season.
Yeah, hey, anytime. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate it, guys.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, one final time. We'll be back in a few short moments right here on the Eastern Observer.